Thanks, everybody. Welcome to Build. I'm your host, Ricky Camilleri. In the 1970s, Robert Mapplethorpe didn't just shake up the art world, he recreated it. His beautiful photographs that depicted homoerotic BDSM, as well as gorgeous celebrities, changed the concept of what could and should be photographed. The new film, Mapplethorpe, by Ondi Timoner, depicts Mapplethorpe, played wonderfully by the great Matt Smith, from his self-discovery as an artist to his death from complications due to AIDS in 1989. Let's take a look at Mapplethorpe.
My name's Patty Smith, and I'm here with Robert Mapplethorpe. You may not know us yet, but we're going to be big stars. Only today we don't have any money.
I want to be a modern Michelangelo.
Do you think if Michelangelo had a camera, he wouldn't have used it?
In church, I found God, and then Polaroid, it led me straight to the devil.
Your work is so raw.
We're making history here.
I can't sell this. I can't even show them.
Is this the shy pornographer?
Who's asking?
I'm a collector.
Sell the public my flowers, and then they can hang them on their walls without realizing what it is they're embracing. I'd love to take your photograph. You're perfect. Do they speak to you?
Even that which we deem obscene, you make look more beautiful than I thought possible.
You scared of dying?
Only before I'm famous.
You don't love anyone, you love yourself.
Don't go. No. Photography, it's about light, it's about composition, it's about the personality of the subject. I'm an artist. I would have been a painter, but the camera was invented.
What gives you solace?
Beauty. Knowing that my work will outlive me.
Everybody, please put your hands together for Ondi Timoner and Matt Smith.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you for having us.
Congratulations on telling this incredible story, the story of Robert Mapplethorpe. No one's made the movie of him yet. I feel like it's a movie that lots of people have been like, when are we going to tell Robert Mapplethorpe's story?
I was wondering the same thing.
Yeah, and so when you decided to do it, how big of a responsibility did that feel like?
Well, it's a huge responsibility that both of us shared in that, you know, this is a real person who was an incredible human being and artist and who created a body of work that is standalone and is currently at the Guggenheim and changed the course of history for LGBTQ, for photography. It was not even a collectible art form. So it was really important in bringing him to life to be accurate with that, but also to have the film look as beautiful or even be as close in the realm of Robert Mapplethorpe's work. If it wasn't beautiful and it didn't carry the contrast of his life, it wasn't going to work.
Is it also fair to say with Mapplethorpe, he's really the first artist to blur the line between pornography and art, or sort of blend the two?
I think that's probably accurate, certainly to get any kind of attention. Yeah. There might have been other people at the time that were up to that, but I don't even think there were that many people doing that. And what he did was he took, you know, he went in first with the Polaroid, and that was his own discovery of his sexuality was happening from behind a camera, sort of safely mediated, you know? And I, as a documentary filmmaker, relate to that. Like, I've been in all kinds of crazy situations, but because I have a camera, I feel a little bit safer. But then he realized if I can take those figures out of the riffraff and out of the dirty underworld club that society deems obscene and turn it into sculpture and show the form and the beauty of the male body, for example, then it's going to be undeniable and people will recognize the beauty I see.
I think that's one thing that the two of you do so well in the film, and it obviously relates to Robert Mapplethorpe, but I think it relates to all great artists, which is when you figure out in a way that when we find out that with which we desire can also be the best art that we can create, whether it's how you write or who you photograph or how you photograph, the best art is what is so attractive to you, whether it's a sexual way or just what you really like. And once he kind of figures that out, he figures out his art form as well. Matt, I feel like I couldn't imagine anybody else playing this role. As soon as you are on screen, as soon as you are talking like Mapplethorpe, you are Mapplethorpe. What was the responsibility like for you to play this part?
Well, like with anyone real, there is a sort of, I suppose, a huge responsibility. I suppose with any character, though, whether it be Doctor Who is an alien, but to me is as real as Robert Mapplethorpe is on some level. Do you know what I mean? I mean, so yeah, there was a responsibility, but I was just excited by his edges and how difficult he was, and I really admire him. I admire how prolific and how focused and his amazing work ethic. But yeah, you know, I was just like, this guy's cool and amazing, and weirdly, he's not in the zeitgeist in England in the same way he is in New York. Well,
he's such a figure of this period of time of New York as well.
And that period of New York is so thrilling. Like, if I lived in New York, I'd live on Bond Street, where he lived. I'd live in the Lower East, down near the Bowery. Like, there were so many things where I just thought, wow, what an amazing time to live in this amazing city.
Yeah, I think everybody who lives in New York now or moved to New York after that period of time has been trying to find that
The
place
70s
in New York,
in New York,
somewhere in
a bit
it.
like the 60s in Soho.
Yeah. We just keep getting moved out more and further out. Yeah.
And there's just loads of yogurt shops.
One of the things that I feel like you do so well with your performance, and you kind of touched on this, is you track his personality change from the early days of discovering who he is, discovering art, discovering what he wanted, to becoming this very prolific and very specific type of person as an artist who knew exactly what he wanted and didn't suffer any fools or any bullshit. No. Is that something that you saw in the script, or you really saw as like, okay, this is how I change as a character?
I mean, both, really. But that's what is sort of amazing about him, is that complete focus on going, this is where I'm going to go, and I don't care if I beg, steal, borrow, trample to get there. That is what I'm going to do. And I just, you know...
Not being afraid to show him at his most arrogant
and cruelest,
yeah,
and ruthless. But then he sort of had that movie star quality in that if you were the center of his world or the center of his attention, then I think it felt like the universe was looking into you, you know, because... And I just think the images are so... they're just so right. Something so right about them, and you don't know why, but you're compelled to look. And who knew that pictures of, like, penises and stuff like that were so compelling? But they are, apparently.
Well, it's like any great piece of art. It feels like it's always been there in a way. Like, how did this not exist before? It's the best thing it could possibly
Especially
be.
Nowadays as well, with the conversations that we're having about the voice in different communities and people that are lesbian or gay or bisexual. And actually now he'd be lauded as a forward-thinking artist, but in the 70s he was vilified. And it's come full circle. It feels very present today, the images in his gallery.
What made you want to take this movie on?
Just what you were talking about. I mean, how uncompromising, how uncompromising he was. How much he took on the impossible and sort of acted impossibly to make his vision real and change the course of our lives. As a result, I felt like it could be an anthem for artists. It could really embolden a lot of people to just stay the course and to make whatever it is that they see that we can't see yet real. And I love that. Those are the people that push the edges of our society and make it more interesting.
Would you say that you have an attraction to people like that? That you as a filmmaker, as a storyteller, are attracted to singular-minded, focused people trying to disrupt or change the world? Or?
Would you say that?
Well, yeah.
I'd say that.
Yeah, I would say that. Looking at your docs, looking at this film, you're very attracted to the singular-minded iconoclast.
Yeah, I do like telling those stories. I'm the daughter of an entrepreneur, a maverick, who founded a fastest-growing airline in the history of America that was very short-lived. And I grew up sort of thinking he was the cat's meow, my father. And I...
That's a good phrase.
The cat's meow.
The cat's meow. I've never heard that.
Oh, really?
Grabbing it.
Right.
Yeah.
I'll use that.
All right. Now it's going across the Atlantic from here, from the Build to England.
She was the cat's meow.
I will say it does sound better with a British accent already.
You know, thank you very much.
I think it's really always been a fascination to me what we are willing to give up to have our lives matter. I feel like as human beings, it's very difficult for us to wrap our heads around the idea that we are here for a fleeting moment and we might not leave a mark. And I think for Mapplethorpe, it drove him as well, that he also seeks love. Like you said, if you're doing something from a place of passion and love, and you're really, you see something that you just can't help but do or make real, it's going to be great. And I feel like there's that inside a lot of people. Then it's untapped. So my work, I hope, is helping people. I hope it inspires people, all the docs and this film too, to kind of go for it, and even if they have fatal flaws, and even if, like Mapplethorpe was very imperfect and very much had a very dark side to him. But he did great things.
Was there any trepidation on your part as a storyteller to show those dark sides, or how much to show of them?
No, I really like the gray area. I think it's I think when audience, I remember with my film Brand: A Second Coming at the London premiere, someone said she changed her opinion of Russell Brand 19 times. It was the highest compliment I felt I could get, because that idea is that they're grappling with their own issues and they're leaning into the movie, and it becomes very personal, and it's very real. Like, we are not perfect, and we all have light and darkness within us. And that was something that, especially with Robert Mapplethorpe, the thing about his images is they all have that contrast, and they all have that kind of bold, uncompromising, here I am, here's what this is the perfect image. And his life was not perfect. And so it became this kind of incredible dichotomy between what he could frame and his life and his intimate relationships. And so I think that's important too. An important lesson is, you can be happy, you can find happiness, you can find love, and still make your work. To not let the work become something that takes you over. I don't know. I mean, I'm hesitant to say that. I want your opinion on it, actually, because we do have to let the work take us over to make great work. But there's more to life than that as well. And Robert died alone.
Yeah, sadly. And yeah,
what do you say, Matt?
Well, I agree with you. There's certainly more to life, but inevitably, I think as artists, you get overrun by this focus and this tunnel vision, which he certainly did. But yeah, he was just vivid and arresting, and it was he was taken too soon, really. And even that story about if you got AIDS at that time as a gay man in New York, it was. Again, you were sort of vilified for it. And there was no support, no help. It was very cruel, very difficult time for gay men.
Yeah, there's a part of his character and a part of the world that you're depicting is that they are, he and a lot of the people he is surrounded by are part of a marginalized community. And within that marginalized community, he holds a lot of power. And unfortunately, his power, while it's used to create great work, is also used in somewhat cruel ways because he is a part of a very cruel world. We see very clearly the sort of hierarchies of power within the art world and within the world at that time. You get a sense of where his cruelty is kind of spawned from, which I imagine was something that you were attempting to do because you don't want it to just seem like he is naturally a brutalistic
well, that's what's so incredible about Matt pulling off this performance in 19 days,
19 days.
Yeah, 19 shoot days it is every color of the rainbow, and the arc of Robert Mapplethorpe is one of a very soft, very loving, very sweet and vulnerable person to someone who's much more hardened and much more, he's taken on the impossible. He's accomplished it, and now he's uncompromising in every aspect of his life, and that was something that, we had to pull off and definitely pull off in a nonlinear way.
Yeah, there's something that you do with your performance, and I'm going to reference one scene in specific, and honestly, it reminded me of Anton in Dig to a degree, which is you're surrounded by a group of men. At this point, you're at the peak of fame, and the way that you're interacting with them is in some ways as if they all revere you, and you're trying to be kind of cool and casual, but you're clearly the leader of this group. They clearly revere you, and you are in control of this dynamic. Even though nothing cruel or anything is happening in that scene, you do this incredible thing with the way that you talk to them, which is that you are the boss of just this group of friends in that moment.
I think it's very true. That happens with fame and success. We see it nowadays all the time. You see it when you're around it as well, that famous cliques sort of exist and there's one central star in the middle of it. And I think weirdly he sort of always wanted to be that. The difference with Robert is that there was this. He's genuinely got the talent and the idea to back it up and the courage to be disliked. That's what we forget. I mean, he was, he got put on a pedestal and lambasted for a lot of it. I mean, the guy in Philadelphia got sacked, didn't he? For putting...
in Cincinnati.
Cincinnati.
Cincinnati, yeah. I mean, right as Robert Mapplethorpe was leaving this world, he was stirring up the greatest controversy. I mean, to this day, my friend Tim Daly, who's very high up at the actor, who works with the Creative Coalition, is still working to try to deal with the NEA not having funding since they supported Robert Mapplethorpe back then.
That's right, because there was a whole debate whether or not public funding could be used for what they deemed as pornography.
As porn,
right?
and nowadays...
The Corcoran Gallery canceled the show.
Yeah. And
Dennis Berry was hauled away in handcuffs at the Cincinnati Museum. This is 30 years ago. March 9th, Robert Mapplethorpe died 30 years ago, 1989.
But it's so much more provocative than porn. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? It's got so much more punch.
Well, it blurs the line. There's a number of photographers, I think, specifically, who've done such an incredible job of that. And Mapplethorpe, I'm not sure, but may have been the first. I don't know when, Larry Clark's Tulsa was shot, but that's sort of one of the first sort of experiences of blurring those lines in a way, even though that's much bleaker depiction of sexuality.
It is that combination of, what he was photographing and the fact that he made photography a collectible art form.
Yeah.
He made sure that it ended up in museums. And that was important to us that he says that to Sam Wagstaff, that it will be on the Met. It will be in the Met, And here it is at the Guggenheim.
And, he lived the life that he photographed. A lot of those great images came after he'd had sex with people. There was this magic hour after he'd had sex and he picked up the camera that a lot of these amazing classic images came out of.
Would possess them and then frame them up.
Yeah.
It's an interesting conversation to have right now.
Exactly, isn't it? But it felt weirdly, I think, from what I understand about it, it felt like a collaboration, not as though someone was being groomed to take a really vivid, graphic sexual photograph, which I think is interesting. This is what I mean. It's all part of the conversation that we're having now, weirdly. But would he be celebrated now if all of these images came out, do you think?
That's so hard to say because he started the ability for these images to happen. There's a movie that's getting released in the UK that's about the Beatles not existing, and then someone rewrites those songs right now, and they become famous. And it's like, would those songs still become famous if they were written right now?
My girlfriend's in it. It's going to be really good.
Odd analogy for me to bring up, I guess. Sorry.
Also, it's sort of interesting connection to Mapplethorpe, but... Yeah, but that movie is going to be really good.
This is really good, too.
Yeah.
You said, I want to go back to this. I'm always fascinated. You said 19 days to shoot the movie. It's an incredibly short period of time, especially to shoot a period piece. Did you find, when you were getting up to your first shoot date, you realized that you have 19 days to shoot? Did you have to rewrite around those days or sort of figure those things out in pre-production?
Yeah, in pre-production and in all the days leading up, different rewrites every single day. Even the day before, and then even on the days while we were shooting, I would start need to combine scenes into a certain location, or we'd lose dialogue, or a lot of improvisation, a lot of just, actually, it was really my history as a documentary editor that helped me the most with that. Just understanding how to quickly edit as we went as a writer.
Did you know you were going to be improvising going into it, or was that something that on the set you were like, let's try these things?
It was my first scripted film, so I didn't really know that I would be in that position. But it's just like anything else in life. It's like, we're running out of time. So I remember Matt and I had a little bit of a spirited debate about a shot in the back of the car. And I was like, just put your head against the window. And you were like, can't I just find it? I was like, you could find it, but you have to break up with Patty today. You have to go shoot all this other stuff. You have to do, go to this magazine. There were so many different things he had to do that day. There were 17 scenes that day. So I was like, or you could just put your head against the window and we can just move on.
This is what I was dealing with.
Which actually, I mean, that hardly ever happened, but like that did happen that day.
It's good,
but it was
though.
a
It's
shot
good.
from Dig. It was actually a shot from Dig that I knew would work because it was that shot where Anton's in the back of the car, or Anton gets out of the car. One of the last shots of Dig, and he kicks up and Courtney drives away, and you can see him in the rear view. He was leaving his brother in the rear view, and I just like ripped off myself in that moment. But it was just, what am I going to do?
You get for having made a few films, you know what's going to work.
Right.
What will tell the story.
Right. But about Mapplethorpe, would he matter now? The thing is, he did it then. And that's what makes him an impossible visionary, and that's what makes him a hero. And so, no matter what, no matter how many bad things he did, he blazed a trail and opened doors for entire communities.
Yeah, that's exactly what I mean. If that trail hadn't been blazed by him, who knows what the art world would be like now, or if someone like that could come along, or if another person would have already come along. It's all about the time that he made these photos, although they are objectively beautiful and brilliant still, I will say.
So you wonder who's going around now, who's blazing trails now that we'll only know about in 30 years from now,
Yeah, absolutely. I'm curious. Well, actually, we have a question from the audience. Let's get a question here from the audience. Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
So my question's going to be for you, Matt. Did you run into any challenges or discrepancies when transitioning from TV to the big screen?
Well, no, I think, because that part of it is sort of out of your hands in many ways, and it turns up on either the television or the big screen. And actually, I think the line between those two things is becoming really blurred anyway. So, no, essentially you prepare the same, you try and go to set and be truthful and not screw it up, really. Do you want to be an actress? Or an actor?
No, I want to be a music performer, but...
Much more interesting to do that.
One of the, I think, strokes of brilliance that you have in this film is your casting, is who you cast as Patti Smith. Because I think when we think of Patti Smith, specifically because of the photographs that Robert Mapplethorpe took of her, we think of this sort of big, strong woman. Big might not be the right word, but big in personality and strong.
And frame. There's a sort of frame to her, isn't there?
And you cast someone who was small and mousy, and you accentuated that. And I thought that was such a smart reinterpreting of her and a way to sort of get past this idea of like, does that look like Patti Smith? Is that Patti Smith?
Interesting. I mean, I felt that where Patti is in the story, where she is in our story, is really before that tough Patti Smith emerges, before that icon emerges, when both Robert and Patti are sort of like these lone wolves in cold New York, neither sure of their artistry. And the irony and the tragedy in their relationship is that they stoke each other as artists and they become who they are from each other's encouragement. And who Robert becomes leads him away from their sexual relationship and their romantic relationship, which was to be lifelong. They've considered themselves soulmates. So you can imagine how crushing that is. So I always thought of the Patti in my movie as someone who was very soft, actually, and lovely. And not to say that Patti's not lovely now.
Or soft. She's very,
Or soft.
Yeah.
But Marianne knew her. Marianne lived next door to her. Marianne Rendón, who plays Patti Smith. Wow. Yeah, and had looked up to Patti Smith and studied her immensely. So she brought, again, a lot of passion to the role.
I mean, who doesn't look up to Patti Smith? She's just such an incredible human being.
Yeah, amazing.
I think we have a question from Twitter. This is from Rebecca Clark. What is the most surprising, interesting thing that you learned about Mapplethorpe while working on this film?
Who's this one to?
You.
You. Go ahead.
Me? Ooh. Well, God, there are so many things, really. I'm sorry, because there's children in the audience, but his kind of sexual appetite, I suppose, was something that I wasn't overly familiar with, and I found that quite a fascinating part of both his art and his personality generally. I mean, look, but there are so many things about him that I loved his fashion sense, and I just loved his sense of like, fuck you, world. I'm coming, whether you want me or not, I'm coming, And I think that's such an amazing spirit to take through art and life.
I love that silver robe that you're wearing in one scene.
Well, there you go. You see, he was an amazing Tom, actually,
Tom Broker,
who did all the
designer.
costumes, who does Saturday Night Live.
Yeah, he's
And
incredible.
he's so good. He
Jonah
did
Markowitz
such a
did
good
the
job.
sets.
Yeah, really good
Combination.
work.
Yeah.
I think we have one more question from the audience. Who's got it? Hi.
Hi. What's the biggest difference, other than the obvious, between this and Doctor Who?
Well, weirdly, I suppose on many levels there's a lot of similarities. They're both outsiders. They both do what they want, essentially. They both tread their own path and give the world a version of themselves, or, the universe a version of themselves that is completely singular and unique. They both don't give up. To some extent, they're both aliens. So there's more similarities than differences, I think. I think they'd have got on quite well, weirdly, the Doctor and Robert Mapplethorpe. I think that would have gone, maybe there's an episode in that. I'm not sure how he'd feel about the leather.
Oh, I love the idea of Doctor Who popping up in
Hey, man.
Mapplethorpe's studio.
Yeah, should we go to the planet of Zorg? And Robert would be like, hi. He'd be like, yeah, why not?
There's a direct connection in that my son was a massive Doctor Who fan, and Matt was his favorite of all the doctors. And he said, oh, he's the best doctor ever, and Mom, you've got to cast him as Robert Mapplethorpe. And he was 9, and I thought, that's crazy. But
the first meeting I went along to, we had lunch, and I thought I was going to meet Ondi, and it was Ondi and her son.
He came to the meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was responsible for me casting Matt Smith.
Was your son like your producer? And he was like, "Look, my son wants you for the part. I'm not
pretty
sure
much.
about it."
That's literally pretty much. That's pretty much what happened.
Yeah.
So thank you, Jukes.
Yeah.
I love the film. Congratulations, incredible work. It opens March 1st, right? Audiences can see it.
Yeah.
How can they see it? Is it?
It's at Cineopolis here in New York, and then it's at the New Art Landmark in LA. Landmark's New Art, I guess it's called, and then it's in Chicago. And I think, gosh, it's Mapplethorpe Movie, or is it at Mapplethorpe Move? I guess. I don't know. I'm at Ondi Timoner. I'll post all the dates. There's like 20 cities or something, so. Don't lose faith, and it'll hopefully expand.
And go and see the gallery as well if you haven't seen it.
Go to the Guggenheim is what my British friend means.
That's it. Sorry, yes.
Gallery.
Go to the Guggenheim.
Everybody
It's
give
the
Ondi
cat's
and
meow.
Matt a huge round of applause for Mapplethorpe. Let's hear it.
Thank you.